Hi. Say hi, Hayden. Hi. Hayden, look. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of our Finding Words series. Today we have Jason and Hilda Killebrew with us. Hilda and I have been family since like 11 years ago or even more, and Jason quickly became family too. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thanks for having us. Jason Killebrew here.
Hilda Killebrew. It's nice to see you again.
So Hilda and I actually met at work like over 10 years ago.
10 years ago.
And our relationship pretty much started on a rocky start. I don't think we liked each other at first.
No, we did not.
We did not. I think it was like both strong personalities together in one small workplace.
Definitely. And then not long after, we actually decided to go to school together. So we would carpool to school and then carpool to work. And then after work, after school, we would still hang out. Weekends, we would hang out. We'd be at each other's houses. We were pretty much inseparable for quite a while.
Yeah, for a super long time. Probably until
I met Jason.
Yeah.
And then we're inseparable.
Well, Jason.
My bad.
So Jason and I have been together for a little over 6 years now.
Well, yeah.
Rewind.
No. We've been together for almost 7 years. We've been married for 6 of those almost 7 years.
Yeah.
It's felt way longer than that, just for the record.
Yeah.
And we met mutually between mutual friends. It was kind of weird how it happened, but we won't go into too much detail. But Hilda and I kind of hit it off.
He slid in my DMs. Just kidding.
This was like before DMs, really. But truthfully, we started off kind of just with common interests. Grew up literally 5 minutes from each other. Definitely had a lot of common experiences, and that's actually what started us talking. And then it blossomed into our family today.
So like we said, we've been married for 5.5 years now. Along those 5 years, we added to our family. We have 2 daughters. We have a 3-year-old, her name is Hayden, and we have a 7-month-old, her name is Harper.
You guys had a lot of stuff going on with that 1 year of your relationship. Like, I remember I actually met you for the first time at Disneyland in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
In a cast.
That's probably the one event that grew us, because I didn't realize tearing my Achilles kind of early on in our relationship how much I needed help. Hilda was my aid. Hilda was my everything at that moment, driving me to work and, cleaning up after me, helping me shower, helping me make sure that I had food and clean clothes. And at that moment, that's when I kind of started picturing Hilda's going to be my wife. But then just trying to figure out how, even though we had this commonality of growing up in the San Gabriel Valley, me being black and her being from Hong Kong, we had to work some things out and figure out, how we were gonna mesh these two cultures together to build on it.
Yeah, because even like he said, even though we grew up in San Gabriel Valley, we still culturally were very, very different.
So even like food.
Food is huge in my Chinese culture. So that was always that is and was always a battle.
Yeah. So and not to complicate things even more, but I actually suffer from an autoimmune disease. So I have ulcerative colitis, and while it's not directly tied to diet, certain foods or certain types of foods actually affect me. So early on, it was tough because, culturally, I just wasn't used to, Asian and Chinese type foods that are, heavy sauced and different types of greases and things of that nature.
Right. Asian food's super rich, so I'm sure that was kind of like a way out of your comfort zone.
Definitely.
So even in Jason meeting my parents and having family dinners, that was always a what is it, like a debacle, I guess?
I wouldn't call it debacle.
It was always a conflict, because it was always trying to find something that would appease both palates, whereas my parents aren't very Americanized, I would say. So it was harder to find like a balance. And mealtime is where everybody comes together and then they talk about their day and stuff like that. So it's always somewhat of a struggle. I don't want to say struggle, but
it's just hard to find a balance.
Yeah,
just
culturally,
and plus like with our parents, well, both our sets of parents, like they immigrated here, and so the one thing that they really hold on to, especially the Asian cultures, is the food.
Yes.
And the food is the gathering time, and that's really how you bond with people. That's whether how you bring over new friends, and you're like my mom, like she tried to feed you every time you came over. That's like a big Filipino thing. And so your parents, in meeting Jason, I'm sure Jason, they just wanted to feed everything to you and have you try new things, and you were just like
I like to pat myself on the back a little bit, because I never said no. And so that was actually part of like my maturation into understanding her culture. And one thing actually that we didn't touch on, which is also tied to cuisine a little bit, is
our religion. His religion at first.
At first it was my religion. So I am a Christian Seventh-day Adventist, and so we really hold to kind of a health message, no pork, no bottom feeders,
which is huge in Chinese culture.
So that on top of just the differences, they would prepare, or we would go to restaurants and there'd be like pork dishes, and I was trying not to be rude, but from a religious standpoint, like I just wasn't going to consume the swine.
That's tough. That is tough.
But in tying both of our cultures together, I actually started practicing Christianity, and I started practicing Seventh-day Adventism, and I got baptized in 2015. Yes, July 4th, 2015. And slowly,
which is our new Independence Day. Not that Independence Day, but we'll come back to that.
After that, like, even explaining the things to my parents, they were more accepting and more willing, like, choosing certain dishes or doing certain things a certain way. They were more open-minded just through time.
Right. So, and that's how you know, Jason. That's really how you know. For Asian parents to really like adjust and be mindful of like, okay, we won't serve the pork dish, or we won't have, the crispy pork dish with the Chinese broccoli, like type deal. Like it's hard. It's a hard adjustment, because I feel, especially in Asian culture, that's kind of how our parents express themselves, and express the acceptance of you and like enjoying having your company there. It's really expressed through food. So that's a big win on your end.
No, it was. And I think kind of the pivot, because her parents at first were not very fond of me. And I think they envision, Hilda being serious with, if not only like a Chinese man, but like an Asian man in general. And being that I was not the first black guy.
Don't say that.
That is true. It's a fact. So I was not the first black.
Cut that out.
No.
That's going in, by the way.
That it has to go in because
it's
part of a premise. Like, so there's a bias. So we have to establish bias.
Okay.
So I was not the first black guy that Hilda introduced to her parents as a significant other. So that was actually an uphill battle, because some of the traits that individual had, her parents, I believe, assumed that I would have those traits. And so a lot of, the pivot point, I think, where they saw it was our first vacation as a family, which was on a cruise, so no other way to
get to nowhere else to go.
No other
really
to get to know the family, because literally there's no place to go. It's just
you're literally
water.
In the middle of the ocean. There's really nowhere to go.
And that was, the pivot for me was, I think her parents actually realized that I genuinely cared for Hilda. That's actually the first time I mentioned to her father that I had every intention of marrying his daughter. And he respected that. He questioned it, not necessarily on my part, but just making sure that I knew what I was signing up for.
Did you?
Whole different interview. But no, but I think, you know, from there, once we got that buy-in from her parents, you know, it gave us a level of comfort to
be us.
Yeah.
So we're talking about you adjusting to the Asian culture, which I understand that can be an uphill battle for sure. But for you, like, did you find yourself also in an uphill battle trying to, you know, accommodate more to the American culture? Because you're Chinese American. It's not like you immigrated over here in that sense. It's a very different type of adjustment.
Right. So so like he said, I was born in Hong Kong, and I came to America when I was 3. So as much as I tried to keep my roots, you know, I still speak Cantonese. I learned Mandarin when I went to school, but just being in America, like being an American, just kind of supersedes being Chinese, which I don't necessarily, how do I put this? I don't necessarily dislike, but that's just the world that we live in now. When I speak English. I'm trying to teach the girls how to speak Cantonese, but then I have to also go back and translate to Jason what things are, and then translate back to Cantonese. So it's like it's more English than it is Cantonese.
Right.
So going back to your question, did I have a hard time adjusting to American culture? I wouldn't say American culture, but more so Black culture.
Right.
Because a lot of the things that we are taught in school downplay black culture, or a lot of the things that we already learned has negative Black connotation in it. So when I would say certain things to Jason's family, who is predominantly Black, like Jason will kick me under the table, like, you can't say that. Like, that's not, you know, that's not appropriate right. for right now. Even something as simple as, can I use the picnic example?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, so even, I think it was like a July 4th or whatever, and I was like, oh, like, let's, you know, pack some lunch and go to the park and have a picnic. Mm-hmm. And then Jason was like, you mean we're just gonna go to the park to have lunch, you know, because there's a negative connotation to the word picnic. I don't want to get it wrong, so correct me if I'm wrong. Back in like,
I will tell the story.
Okay, please tell the story.
Because you
I will butcher it.
And I'll be really, really simple with the explanation, because I don't think a lot of people know. And so so this is generational. It's a word that's generationally passed on. But you know, pre-Emancipation Proclamation times, so slavery days, they actually would, and I say they, Americans, white Americans mostly, would go to large open fields, which today we call parks. They would take a wicker basket lunch, and they would have a series of different types of games where they would make slaves do certain types of things, even to the point of hanging a slave to see how long that they would last before they died. And that actually was called pick-a-nigger, or ER, pick-a-nigger, and shortened to picnic. Guarantee no public school or private school, maybe some private schools, but no schools are sharing that type of history, because it's a really bad history with something that now is considered like an American pastime. So it's like little things like that, you know, when Hilda mentions has like a negative connotation, it's only negative if you know the history. And so she wasn't exposed to that, and my family is very educated, very well woke, if you will. And so you know, those are the types of stories that were shared with us all throughout our childhood, to just make sure that we were aware of who we were, and be strong and educated, and being able to you know, fight for ourselves.
Absolutely. And I mean, in today's climate, like today's societal climate, even me asking that question, the way I phrase it, like, how is it adjusting to American culture? Like, it's a time where we have to stop dancing around things and kind of just walk through the things that are uncomfortable. So instead of saying American, I should have just said, how is it adjusting to Black American culture?
Yeah.
And now that we're talking about that, for you guys, I know, like Jason's saying right now, he has to teach you certain things, like continuously as they happen. You know, you're not going to have all the answers at once, but as the little things happen and occur and he tells you the background of it, you start to adjust. And I know in the past couple of years, especially, like, you've been working really hard to educate yourself on things.
Definitely. A lot of relearning. Just language, you know, even body language. We drove down to South LA one day. I think we were just, I don't know, to go to lunch or something.
No, go to Uncle Kevin's house.
Yeah, well, going to, see one of his relatives. And then there was a lot of traffic. I don't know what street we were going down. There was a lot of traffic. And I, you know, little girl from Arcadia just went on my phone. Oh, you know, let's take the side street. And he looked at me. He was like, "Are you crazy? Like, are you crazy? Like, we're not going down any side street in South LA. Like, it is not."
And the reason for that was not necessarily because it was dangerous or not, but the fact of her lack of awareness and observation to know what to look for, like when you're in the hood, or to recognize traps, or for them to look at me and question me because I'm riding around with a little Asian girl in my front seat, in my Charger that's sitting on dubs. So like all of these, and on top of that, you know, she threw on her hoodie, and like there's just all these different things, and that's not necessarily just like Black culture, but it's just more of hood awareness, and so that we can throw that in there too. And don't get me wrong, like I went to prep school and grew up in Pasadena, and so you know, I am very far from, I mean, I'm wearing a pink shirt, like I'm very far from
Floral shirt.
From being hood by any means. But going back to that educational piece, like my dad is from Compton, my mom is from the Bronx in New York, and so just having a situational awareness, them taking me, you know, to their neighborhoods, taking me to other neighborhoods, just to have an appreciation for, you know, their sacrifice and what they're doing for us, you know, is something that even today, like, you know, we're sitting here in a community park for our homeowners association, in our gated community, you know, 20 steps from our house. But that, in the same token, you know, Hayden and Harper, I'm going to do my job to, you know, expose them to other types of life, just so that they can have a tolerance moving forward. And I think that's like the key to everything.
Absolutely. And I mean, what you're talking about right there, about how your parents took you to where they grew up from to kind of show you, this is what we've sacrificed, this is how and where we got you to where you are today, and how we were able to raise you and your siblings, right? I think that's something that you guys can connect with also, because, you know, immigrant parents coming to America, it's all stories about how they really sacrificed everything, everything to be here. And that's something like my dad, till this day, will talk about the sacrifices he's made. And so that's something we can all agree on and understand with each other. All right, so with everything going on in today's world, with the current climate, how have you guys been handling that?
You want to take that?
We can. So it's what is it? July 2020. The most prevalent topics right now are COVID, Black Lives Matter, and just racism. And if you can't tell, we are, you know, the target of each of those.
Well, so from a COVID standpoint, I mean, even the so-called president of the United States, you know, he calls it the China virus.
COVID-19, that name gets further and further away from China, as opposed to calling it the Chinese virus.
Kung flu.
or the kung flu.
Kung flu.
They eat bats.
Why it started in China?
Okay.
Because they have these markets where they're eating raw bats and snakes.
And Wuhan and everything just anti-Chinese.
Right.
And
So that puts a target on my back.
yes, so even in, when we're apart and people actually don't see my Chinese wife next to me and feel that they can make certain types of statements because there is no Asian person around. Because I work in Riverside County. I won't say where, but I work in Riverside County, which is a predominantly red county and a very vocally red, conservative, Trump-supporting county. And so comments, and I work in a very elevated position. So I'm talking with a lot of people that are positions of power, positions of authority. And, I have to defend, my wife. I have to speak up. And so in those moments, it's kind of like I didn't mean to be offensive. I'm like, well, you were. And just so you know, too, my wife is from Hong Kong. So when you speak negatively or fictionally, and when I say fictionally, it's like, statements based with no fact, it hurts me the same way. And so, when we became married, we became one. And so I'm black, but my children are half Chinese and my wife is Chinese. And so that makes me very much a proponent of, China, Hong Kong, Asian culture in general.
And in the same breath, I have to defend Black America because my husband is Black when it comes to the people that I work with also. I work in social services, and the people that I serve are predominantly Asian community. And historically, Asian people and Black people don't get along. I don't know how far back we want to go to discuss that, but
That's a deep hole.
Yeah, so a lot of the stuff that, when the protesters were going on and the riots were going on, a lot of the people that I was working with, the community that I serve, were saying, well, why do they have to do that? Why do they have to destroy things? And I'm like, well,
let's make a clarifying point so that not all protesters are destroying
Right,
things.
right.
Not all protesters are looters.
Right, but they were speaking primarily about looters and rioters, but not all rioters were Black.
This is not a Black woman who's putting Black Lives Matter. Listen, don't spray stuff out here when they gonna blame Black people for this and Black people didn't do it. Don't spray on these people's buildings. That's not our message. We out here standing together peacefully, protesting without any problems.
Not all the looters were Black, if at all. But so in that scenario, I had to defend my husband, who is not out looting or whatever, but just the umbrella of, well, it's all the Black people doing this and doing that. And I was like, well, no, the Black people were actually protesting very peacefully.
And might I say, sorry to cut you off, but the focus, that, I think that speaks volumes, is the focus of not the why. So why are they protesting? Why are we protesting? Why are we upset?
Right.
Why, that is not being discussed.
Right.
The small percentage of property damage is what's, making the headlines. And, I've heard Hilda on the phone, or seen her respond to a social media post, just you guys, people don't get it. And if you had experience, or your father or mother or grandmother or grandfather experienced the type of things that we're fighting against, you would be right there too. And that's what I see in Hilda is evident, is that, you know, she's been in a car when I've been tailed, you know, and they only turn away when I open my garage and pull into my driveway. You know, she's seen that. She's heard the stories about, you know, me burning my cheek because I got slammed on a police car just for being, you know, in a wrong neighborhood and determined to be a suspect. So it's, you know, it's an awareness that that I'm very grateful for, because not a lot of multicultural, biracial, whatever you want to call it, relationships have that type of respect for each other.
I mean, while we're talking about that, I remember specifically one post that you made on social media where you guys did a 2.5 mile walk.
Yeah, 2.23 for Ahmaud
2.23.
Arbery.
And you had posted that you make it a point to wave to the people around your neighborhood.
Yeah.
And Hilda said, "What are you doing? Like, are you running?"
Because I'm very like,
Keep to yourself.
yeah, I keep to myself. I was like, you know, well, that's the Asian,
Yes.
you know, the Asian
Mentality.
you know, keep to yourself. Don't disturb the model minority, if you will.
The
you
model
know?
minority myth.
Right.
The myth.
The myth. Like be submissive. You know,
be
don't
quiet.
be quiet. Exactly. Don't stir the pot or whatnot.
Right.
But then I have him over here, you know, waving to everybody. You know, hey, how are you doing? And I'm just like,
Right.
you know, you know, I don't want people to know where we live.
Right,
You know,
right.
like it's our privacy. But
But I want people to know where we live.
but
Right.
right. Because
Yeah. Can you explain a little further,
Yeah.
like why?
Yeah,
you
it's
said-
so the Ahmaud thing actually hit me really hard, and not more so than, you know, every other life, you know, matters, right? So I'll even say that, like, all lives matter, but certain lives need more attention.
like Black lives.
So the Ahmaud thing really hit me hard because that's me. I'm always outside. I'm always by myself. We don't live in predominantly Black neighborhoods. We live in, you know, very suburban, you know, I would call it, you know, your model type communities. And so people like me aren't supposed to live there, right? And so rather than having my neighbors, you know, see me out jogging at 11 o'clock at night and report me as a suspect, or see me, you know, walking by myself in the neighborhood or driving, and I'm not saying this to like toot my horn, but like driving one of our BMWs like in and out of the neighborhood. I don't want them to think that I don't belong. So me walking around our community and talking to people is just me
Staking your claim, pretty much.
yeah, letting you know that I belong.
I'm here.
I'm here. I worked hard to get here, and don't devalue me. Don't stereotype me, and keep my family safe. And that really is the whole purpose with doing that.
It's definitely the polar opposite of being Asian. You know, as Asians, we're raised to kind of not be introverts necessarily, but really just.
Oh no, you're.
We're introverts. All right. I was trying to sugarcoat it, but really, we're just supposed to blend. We're supposed to assimilate as best as possible. Don't use your Asian language outside of the house. Like, you grew up and you know how to speak Cantonese. For me, on my end, like, my parents didn't want me speaking Tagalog in public. They didn't want me to acquire any type of accent that would put me at an even more disadvantage to be considered American, even though I'm born and raised in America, you know. And so it's just very different takes that we have in regards to fitting into our communities. And so I know that the two of you have been working hard to be allies, and not just for each other, but also teaching your families to be allies for each other. And I'm
Definitely.
sure that's a lot of work. And the thing with biracial or multiracial marriages or relationships in general is there's this like craze and obsession with them. Everyone's like, oh, I want mixed babies. I just want to have like a guy or a girl from this other culture. That's a whole other story. But, you know, for for biracial and multiracial relationships in general and families, there's so much balance that goes into it. It's not just about the cute babies that you're going to have, or, you know, being able to say like, oh, you know, like I'm dating someone outside of our culture. Right. It's a ton of balance and a ton of work.
Yeah.
Right. One of the things that I make it very, very important is to not only categorize our children as beautiful, not categorize my child as cute, you know, like right. She's also very intelligent. She's very kind, very polite.
It's like the affirmations.
Huh? Yeah. And so since Hayden was since she was about able to talk, so like a little over a year, maybe like 15, 18 months, we pray with her every night. And then we also added affirmations. And she says them every night. She says, and we did hand gestures because she wasn't really saying it very clearly. Yeah. So we taught her she is intelligent, so we report to her head or her brain. She is kind with her heart. She is black, so you know, black power. Right. She is Chinese. You know, we do a lot of bowing and stuff. So Chinese like this. She is Christian, so praying hands. And then
she is beautiful.
She's beautiful. We'll add that in there.
I'm beautiful.
You're beautiful. I'm strong. I'm
black.
I'm black. I'm Chinese. I'm Christian. I'm intelligent. And I'm kind. I'm kind.
I'm kind.
And I am Hayden. Say, I am Hayden. And then more so recently, we added I am worthy, because we want her to know that her life matters. You know, absolutely. She is worthy. So yeah, she says that every day.
And then the last thing we end with is we have her point to herself and say, I am Hayden. Yeah. And we want her to love who she is, love herself, value herself. And we think that is the key characteristic that she needs to have in order to maintain happiness in her life.
Right. So if you see her smiling and, you know, talking circles around other people, it's because we try to instill confidence in her.
Absolutely. So. She's definitely one of the most confident 3-year-olds I've ever met. And she can hold like a long conversation, not just about random things, you know, that most kids talk about, but, you know, like even her responses, I'm like, well, Hayden, do you have any snacks? She goes, well, like she actually pauses to think. Like she might be the most intelligent 3-year-old I've ever met.
Thank you.
We're a little biased to that.
Yeah. I might be a little biased too. So when we're talking about educating, right. You know, yourselves, well, not just yourselves and each other, but your families, right. I'm sure that process, you know, while it is a long process and it's a forever ongoing process, I'm sure there's a lot of really great experiences and beautiful moments that come from it too. Mm-hmm. And so can you guys talk a little bit more about what that process has been like so far for you? You want to go first?
Yeah. So the most, in this whole thing, I think the most life-changing and challenging moment for me was actually traveling to Hong Kong. And so I love to travel, but I love to travel
short distances.
I was even planning this trip, yeah. So Chinese New Year holiday, 2018. So not only am I traveling to Hong Kong, but I'm traveling to Hong Kong like during like the biggest time of the year for them. And I had, I'm not gonna lie, so I had anxiety. So picture we've been married for 2 years already, and I still had not gone. So there was a hesitation, one, you know, because of the flight time, and two, just, you know,
a culture shock,
yeah, you know, and you hear all these things. So you hear about the bathrooms, and you hear about it's so crowded and it's so, you know, tight, and you got a 15-hour plane ride, and people go crazy on that 15-hour plane ride. And it's like, so you have all these like negative things, built up, and that was my anxiety. But, getting on the flight, which was a whole nother thing, because even Hilda, once I saw that even Hilda and all these other Hong Kong natives were fidgety and tiresome and agitated and
slightly smaller.
And it was my first time flying. We fly back and forth all the time, but it was my first time flying with an 8-month-old.
yeah.
So that in itself was another level, that we unlocked together.
Yeah. So anyways, we get there, and as we're driving into we couldn't sleep obviously, but her uncle picked us up, and that was kind of like the best part about it is a lot of her family had come over and had met me in 2016. So I at least had familiar faces, but I also was meeting the majority of her mom's family, which I hadn't met before. And so her uncle that I had never met before picks us up, and he's just, he hugs me. Well, we're so glad you came. Welcome to Hong Kong. And mind you, there's probably thousands of people at the airport, and I am the only black guy.
Man. And everybody's like 5'8".
Yeah,
5'8".
Which is that's a whole nother shock to me, because they do not build things for larger people there. But driving into the city, everything that Hilda had shared with me before, I started to feel it. And throughout the trip, I expanded my mind. I was open to new experiences. I almost pooped in a hole, but I didn't. But she didn't warn me about that, because we did these excursions outside of Hong Kong, which Hong Kong is very Western, because it was under British rule for so long. But so that was cool. It was fine. It's actually one of my favorite cities in the world, and I've been to a few.
Oh, thanks.
I can't wait to go back. Actually, this whole COVID thing messed that up, because we were planning to go back.
Yeah.
But
No one's going anywhere for a while.
Nope.
no. But so we were in Macau in the ferry terminal, and you're irregular when you're traveling. And I think it was like day 2, and I walked into the bathroom she gave me no warning, and there's a stall with a hole in the ground, no curtain, no door, and I walked right back out, which is even more funny. Since we're on the topic of poo, her mom, as we're leaving the hotel the first day, hands me this tissue, like an individual tissue pack, like Kleenex, and I'm like, but it wasn't Kleenex, but it's some other brand. It was a little thicker. And I was like, what the heck is this? She's like, put it in your jacket, put it in your pants, make sure you have. She's like, the restrooms around town don't have toilet paper. Yeah, so I came right out. But that, that's part of when we say we're into it for each other. We're into growing, experiencing new things. For me, flying halfway across the world was my commitment to saying, Hilda, I want to experience your culture. I want to learn your culture. I want our children to experience your culture. So on top of that, taking our 8-month-old halfway across the world to meet her family, to experience her culture, to see her birthplace, is something that we've established in our family as going to be a tradition. So every 2 years was our plan. So 2020 was going to be that 2-year anniversary, but COVID jacked that up.
We postponed that.
But yeah, so that is probably my biggest growth experience, Patricia, was traveling to Hong Kong.
Right.
He did. It's very, very official. Very official. As long as we don't say Patty, we're good.
I always, if you look at my phone right now,
It says Patricia.
her name is Patricia, because
He's one of those official people when he puts people on his phone, isn't he? Very official. So Jason talked about his pivotal growth moment in the relationship. What's your pivotal growth moment? What's that turning point? Or what was that turning point?
When I was growing up, we didn't have like religion really. We had culture, you know, like we prayed to our ancestors, we had an altar or whatnot, but it wasn't really religious. It was just
Not practicing.
yeah,
faith
we didn't
per
practice.
se.
It was just something that we did for many, many generations, and we kept doing. And actually, my mom stopped doing after my grandma died.
Right.
But that's a whole other thing. So when I met Jason, we actually started going to church again. Or no, rewind.
Well, actually,
When I met Jason, he was not going to church. We were both in our phase of life where we wanted to be, you know, have fun and
Right.
go out and do you know, things. But then when we met, we decided, you know, like what are our core values? We started going to church, and my only experience of church are weddings and funerals.
Right.
And
that one time I took you to church
Yes.
with me and my family.
Yeah, and that was a lot of, and it was a Catholic church, so, you know, there was not a lot of singing, but a lot of praying and reading. I don't know what it's called.
There was no Gregorian chant per se,
Right.
but it was definitely like old school traditional
Yeah.
Roman Catholicism.
Right. So fast forward a couple of years, I started going to church with Jason. It was great. A lot of music, and music is huge in, you know, Black culture. A lot of singing, and every time I left church, I felt so good.
Right.
I felt like the Spirit was just, you know, with me through the entire week until the end of the week, and I was like, oh, I'm feeling tired again, you
Right.
know. And then I would go to church, and then I would get rejuvenated.
Right.
So that was my pivotal point of, you know, learning his religion, being baptized, and then practicing his religion which is a polar opposite of what I knew, you know.
Right.
So
and then now with the girls, just making it fun. I was actually talking to a longtime friend who grew up in the church the same way that I did, and I think our generation is taking an approach to the religion and being less religious and more like spiritual, and creating an attractiveness to, you know, that relationship with Christ, where as growing up for me, it was more of just like
mandate
a lot of rules, and it actually deterred me away from the church. And so we're trying to create that safe, happy, enjoyable place of religion in our girls. Things that from my standpoint are like non-tradition from a religious standpoint. So, but we still want to magnify, you know, our spiritual days, our high days, our Sabbath days, to make sure that we reverence that, but still, you know, make it something to look forward to, our children to look forward to.
On Sabbath, we will do hikes, you know, just go be with nature, and just kind of
do stuff fun.
Yeah,
Like
do fun stuff.
we'll do fun stuff, and just, you know, it's still in what we would consider holy, because it's different from, you know, our other days of the week. But creating that special place with reverence is our goal with our children.
One thing I've always admired about you is how much care you put into Hayden's natural hair. And that's something that I know is a challenge, simply because I also have a cousin, and she helps her daughter embrace her natural hair too, you know, amid all the Asian half of the family going like, really, you don't want to straighten it? And she's like, no, like, I love her natural hair. And that's something I see you doing with Hayden.
Right.
And you take really good care of it.
Thank you.
And I know that
She
was
does.
something you had maybe not the easiest time with, just because
No.
Jason doesn't have a lot of females in the family who do their hair in a specific way that you want to do
Right.
for Hayden. So
Right.
how was that process like? Like, what was that like
So
for you?
even backing up as not being a mother, you want your child to be presentable at all times. And that has just, from having their clothes that fit, or, not having snot coming out of their nose, even though, yeah. So having Hayden's hair look a certain way is very important to me, because I feel like that's a reflection of me as a mother.
Absolutely.
That aside, like you said, she is biracial, so her hair texture is very different from mine. Jason has cousins in his family who are predominantly black. Their hair texture is different from Hayden's. So as much as I try to ask them for advice, it really does not, it doesn't work the same way. So in getting her hair to be healthy, I say that in quotes because it's a very, and Jason and I were actually having this discussion the other day, it's a very white, what is the word we were using?
No, that
word.
established, no, like the establishment of the word healthy. And tying it to a certain
It's very
look of the hair
white-centric.
is
White-centric, it has to be,
like kink,
like kink.
like kink. So you were talking about this the other day, because I said, my roots obviously are from Africa, so West Africa. So thank you 23andMe. And if you look at a lot of tribal tribal technique and how you do hair, kink, the kink part of it, the lock part of it, which a lot of people is very much the common,
right.
Whereas American,
you want it as straight, untangled, as less of as much as possible. So in doing that, there was a lot of research put into it, a lot of trial and error, buying different products, trying different techniques. I have wavy, if that, but predominantly straight hair. So all you gotta do is I just gotta run a comb or a brush through it.
Some hair product.
Right, if I even need that. But with curly hair, you can't brush curly hair. I did not know that the first couple of times that I was styling Hayden's hair. I did not know you can't style her hair dry. You have to put leave-in conditioner and oil and creams and a whole bunch of other things to make her hair look healthy.
Right.
And then I also go to the other spectrum, and I don't do anything with her hair, just wash and go. And then that's when her hair is just out curly, and then we call it a fro.
Right.
But then a lot of people will go, well, why isn't her hair done? Do you not care about how she looks? And I was like, no, this is her natural hair. We need to embrace it.
Right.
And then
a good piece of that though is her dad, actually his favorite hairstyle.
Yeah, my dad
on
loves
Hayden is when it's natural.
Yeah, natural, just out. Because back in the day, my dad actually had hair, and when it grew out, it looked like that. And he was like, I love it, This was back in the 70s, where the whole disco thing was really big, and then that's just what he was reminded of, and he really liked it. And another thing, at school, people are always trying to touch her hair. The kids at school are always trying to touch their hair, and what I had to teach her was to tell the kids, don't touch my hair, or please don't touch my hair, because that's a part of her body. Her hair is an extension of her body, and that's her personal space. And and I feel like a lot of black girls are subject to that kind of
accosting.
Yeah. Can I touch your hair?
Right.
No, you can't. Is your hair real? It's growing out of my scalp. It's pretty. Well, it's growing out of her scalp. It's pretty real. So just learning to teach her, to teach other people their boundaries.
Right.
Hayden now loves her hair. She'll ask me. She goes, "Mommy, I want a puff." And that'll be the one
natural,
puff.
right.
Or she'll go, "Mommy, I want 2 puffs," and then it's the 2. Or she'll ask for braids, and then she just learning how to love her hair, just the way that it is. She she's also really into Disney princesses, but she doesn't ask to, be blonde, or she doesn't ask for her hair to be straight.
Well, I think it's funny.
What?
Sorry, her two favorite Disney princesses,
yeah.
and this is not even us, because she definitely watches Frozen more than any other
Right.
Disney movie.
Her two favorite are Mulan and Princess Tiana.
Perfect.
So, yeah. So we haven't even, we didn't push that on her or anything. It was just, I think she, what is it called? Representation matters. And I think because
Absolutely.
she sees that, hey, she kind of looks like me, and then Tiana kind of looks like me too, so those are going to be my favorite. So that really was pretty cool.
I think that's a strong testament to you guys, because she can identify as both. That's been a growing problem, or it's been a problem for years, of kids who are multiracial or biracial, where they strongly identify with one but not so much with the other. And so
Right.
that's a strong testament to you guys as parents, that you've instilled that in her, that she's confident in her identity, both sides of her culture.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I even see that within myself. Like even I am Chinese American, but I do struggle with coming out and being more forward of being Chinese, because it's not,
Yeah, and like you said, we grew up in a time where we didn't see people that looked like us on
Right.
TV. And if we did, it would be a Chinese playing a Japanese, or Filipinos who play Mexicans or
Right.
Hispanics. And
it's the same roles, and it's
yeah.
always minor roles, and they're always, villain roles, never really like a heroic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
same with black people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Always.
Right. The sidekick, or the best friend that kind of just encourages you, but they don't have significant roles. And
Or the
I
first person that dies in a movie.
Right.
No, just it's true, but
But I mean, media has come a long way in those terms, and I know that there's usually a lot of backlash, why wasn't Tiana's hair a little more natural? Why was it combed and slicked back, and it was more manageable, or Moana? And everybody's gonna have something to say, but the fact of the matter is that there's progress. There's a lot more to be done, but regardless, there's progress.
It's funny that you brought up movies, because Jason and I actually watch a lot of movies at night, because we're tired and we just, veg out on the couch.
But even before that, even like you said, she's very introverted.
Right.
So, during our dating times, a lot of times we would just chill, get some good food, and just chill and watch a movie.
Yeah.
And both of our families are, that's kind of what they do.
Right. And on that token, it's why I wanted to bring that up was because Jason would introduce me to a lot of black. How do I say?
Black media.
Black media, non-mainstream, just so I would be able to learn more. And then on the flip side, 2015 and on, a lot of Asian films were coming, to mainstream, mainstream America. And then we watched a couple of those together, and just, learning each other's cultures and just trying to explain. One movie we tried to watch, but I couldn't bring myself to watch just quite yet, was The Farewell. Mm-hmm. Even though they have captions and whatnot, Jason tried to watch it, but just from an emotional standpoint, I can't bring myself to watch that just yet. Right. But the fact that he was willing to sit there, watching a movie that, was in Mandarin, it's really nice to see him, that he still wanted to continue to learn, even though it wasn't something that I was comfortable doing. Mm-hmm. He was still willing to.
So to wrap this all up with the climate that it's in right now, what do you guys plan to do moving forward, I guess, with or without the climate?
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly that. So, it was a different time when her and I started our journey in 2013. And so much, when I say different, it just wasn't in the face of everybody. Right. So we were aware of it, but now everyone's aware of it.
Right, it's come to the surface.
Yeah, and then, the so-called president on top of that just, magnifies everything. But, when we set out on our journey, our values, our roots, our core beliefs were aligned. And, with these challenging times, or outside of challenging times, good times, we probably would have been, fairly consistent to our approach in life, either way.
Right.
And so, you know, understanding, you know, those characteristics that we want to embody, those are the characteristics that we want to teach our children. And those are the characteristics we want to represent as, you know, the Jason and Hilda Killebrew family. And that's what we live by. So you just want to be, you know, kind, educated, you know, loving and happy people.
Absolutely. And it's just like you said, this is really just your daily lives, you know.
Yeah.
It's not like some sort of movement that's just come about. It's literally just your daily lives as a biracial couple, and B, you know, as a Black American and a Chinese American, just navigating life. Like, this is the normal for you guys.
Exactly. Exactly. But thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Of course, anytime. Anytime.
Thank you guys for taking the time to have a talk. You usually have these talks. This is normal.
Right.
Just this time it's in front of a camera. Obviously, I love you guys. You guys
I love
are
you
family.
too.
And the cute little girl all over their Instagram is obviously their daughter, my niece, and also Harper, who's quietly asleep right now in Gabe's arms.
Gabe's the man.
Baby whisperer.
Baby whisperer. And Jordan, who's not on camera, is currently watching Disney movies, probably Frozen or Moana with Hayden.
Goodbye.
Oh, all right.
Thank
Catch
you.
you guys in the next episode.
Bye.